best of Off the Record, and today we present a great one-on-one sit-down with Jim Ross, JR, head of the WWE talent and the voice that you hear. Now, we interviewed Jim a few years back, and he was a nice guy off camera, but he was pretty lame as a guest. So we weren't sure about his second go-around. Thank God we did it. He is so honest about the behind-the-scenes of pro wrestling, especially the rise and the fall of Jeff Hardy. If you missed it, you gotta watch Jim Ross one-on-one, so bring it on.
Off the Record with Michael Landsberg is brought to you by the Cake Steakhouse and Bar. For great steaks, good friends, see you tonight.
You know, my voice is going, and one of the reasons I think is JR, Jim Ross, punched me in the throat right before this interview to get a leg up. Is that the case?
I'm sorry. I can't control myself. Too much coffee.
You are the Senior VP of Talent Relations, and as I said on your first appearance in this show, I think you are an awesome announcer, one of the greatest at what you do in the world today. Thanks for joining us.
Oh, thank you, Mike.
Last time you were on the show, I'm not sure that you were as candid as you wanted to be. Were you a little bit guarded the first time?
Maybe.
You were guarded in the question about being guarded. How about that?
Maybe, you know, you want to be careful not to hurt anybody's feelings. In my role, you don't want to alienate your troops. So I might have been.
Okay.
But today, I'm ready.
Okay, well then let's talk about one of your guys, and I know you don't want to alienate him, but what's your evaluation of Bill Goldberg? So far, his return, the reviews have been quite mixed.
Big Jewish fella. Big guy. I've known Billy since he was a defensive tackle at Tulsa Edison High School. And then I was on the Falcon broadcast team, the Atlanta Falcons, that is, of the National Football League in 1992, and Billy was a backup defensive tackle. So I've known Bill in a lot of different ways before he got into wrestling. And I think that the expectations probably, by our own admission, and certainly apparently by the fans, was a little high.
Right, because you guys are looking for the next guy to take you to the next level, and you were hoping when you went to Japan to get a guy who financially probably you had a tough time giving him incentive because he's got so much damn money. You went out there, you pay him a lot of money, so your expectations really were to give you the next Rock or something like that, right?
Yeah, and we wanted to replicate that streak that he was on in the heyday of Nitro in the old Turner era, and that's hard to do. It's hard to go back and retrace history. And then we thought about trying to expand his character and add a little humor, and that didn't really work as well as it was envisioned on the drawing board. So I think our expectations probably were unfairly high, but we have to get Goldberg back in the character that made him Goldberg, and that is an animal, less talk, you know, grunt a little bit, talk a little bit, but get your work done in the ring.
One of the things that the WCW did with him was they kept his matches really short, 5-minute matches, and therefore you see all of the good and not so many of the weaknesses, which everyone has admitted that he has.
Well, he's not a slick catch-as-catch-can chain wrestling guy. He's a power guy, and they also kept somewhat of a unique Goldberg mystique, and we wanted to, I guess, reinvent Goldberg. I don't know that he needed to be reinvented.
Was that a mistake then, maybe?
Maybe in hindsight. I think so, probably in hindsight.
How do you fix it?
You get back to what brought you to the dance, and you put him back in the mode and the characterization that got him recognized to begin with. I think we're taking some steps to do that. His issues with Chris Jericho have been very helpful to Bill because Jericho is so entertaining, so talented, that it allows Goldberg to grow. And I thought their Bad Blood match was exceptionally good, especially for Bill.
One of the things that the WWF at the time and now the WWE said is that you never wanted to be WCW. But you got a lot of WCW guys and a lot of older guys in there who you're kind of hanging your hat on with the Hulk and Ric Flair and Roddy Piper, all over 50 years of age and all making big money. Are you concerned at all about duplicating the issues that I think brought the WCW down?
I think that we have to be very careful who we allocate spotlight to. I think that we have to be very cognizant that for us to grow and to get to the promised land, that we have to grow with youth. I think we have to use the established guys to get the rub, as they say in the business, to the younger guys. I thought that a recent episode of Raw kind of indicated that with Randy Orton getting a spotlight, some of the younger guys. So I think that we have to be very careful there's a lot of things we balance. We balance action and talk. We balance in-ring things and backstage things, and we have to balance who gets the spotlight, the old guys or the young guys, in the right blend.
Let me throw out some names, and already I'm feeling a candor here that I didn't see before last time. That's awesome. Let's talk about Booker T. We get a ton of emails from people saying that he should be the next big guy. Why isn't he bigger?
I think that we're in the process of making Booker T bigger. I think that Booker T right now is, from my experience with other talents, is on a chase. He's chasing Christian in the Intercontinental title, and there's something about human nature where the underdog or the hero, when he's on the trail of his goal, sometimes it's like dating. The chase is better than the conquest. At least it has been in my lifetime, but that's another story for a late night.
Hey, no, we'll push this one back. We can wait.
And so I think Booker T is, his time is imminent. So there's a definite focus that let's elevate Booker T.
Sting, have you talked to him? His name's been out there.
I haven't talked to Sting since last year. We had some, over a couple of 3-week period, we had 4 or 5 conversations about coming in and joining us. You know, he's real involved in it, Promise Keepers, a religious organization. Or as you say, Michael, organization.
Is that what I say? Organization.
That's what you say.
Well, you could put him with Shawn Michaels because he's quite involved with religious organizations as well.
Exactly. Sting has saved his money.
The Holy Rollers, there you go.
He made a lot of, yeah, there you go. He made a lot of money. He's got a young family, young children. He likes being home. So if we are able to do a deal with him somewhere down the road, which I would like, by the way. I would.
How about Savage?
I don't think he'll be back, but that's just my opinion. You never say never in this crazy business, but I don't see him fitting in right now with where we should go.
If we would have had this conversation 2 years ago, a year ago, and I would have said, well, how about Sable? Would you have said, no, I don't think she'll ever be back?
I probably would have said never say never, but probably not. And I'm the one that hired her back because Creative had something for her. You know, she did sue us for sexual harassment, I think for just only $10 million. She didn't win a dime. She sued us for her name.
So how do you let her back in? I mean, most industries wouldn't. Or is it simply the business philosophy, which is if the people want her, let's bring her in, even if we don't like her?
When you have a primary demographic of males 18 to 34 and young men 12 to 17 with Sable's obvious attributes, you have to look at it. And you look at it, matter of fact, very thoroughly sometimes. But I think that we do what's best for the product. And we believe, Vince and I, that she could come back and contribute to our product. So you forgive and forget, and you give people second chances. You know, I've got a second chance with this company. I was fired here twice. So I'm glad for second chances.
Let's talk about second chances. And I want to ask you about Trish Stratus later on. But second chances, how about Mick Foley?
You have no chance with Trish Stratus, by the way.
I have no chance with Trish Stratus?
So your second chance is your last chance, your history with her.
Really? So I blew my first chance?
Bingo.
All we did was put her on this show, and all of a sudden the WWE looks at her and they say she's pretty good. So we have a good thing going. Before I'm done,
she also asked me to tell you to quit calling.
To quit calling her?
Ixnay the calls.
Oh, this interview has just turned. You did the heel turn, man, and so am I. I got to ask you, Mick Foley. Is there any chance we could see him again doing his thing?
Yeah, I think so. Most definitely. I think
in the ring. In the ring.
In the ring, maybe on a reoccurring basis. I think there's a very distinct possibility that Mick will wrestle for us again, at least on a part-time basis.
That's a perfect segue. We'll take a break. I want to talk to you about injuries, risks, assuming that risk, and your responsibility when OTR returns. How long did you wrestle over the period of time where you were starting to feel numbness, where you were getting some...
2 months.
So you were actually taking bumps for 2 months.
And every time I did, I felt like I needed to vomit. So I'm on TV, and I'm trying to hold this in and not letting anyone know, because that's just what we do, you know? So I wrestled through it, and then finally got to a point where I lost my strength, and when the muscles start to atrophy, now it affects your appearance on TV, and that's 50% of what we do is our appearance.
That's fascinating. That's Canadian Adam Copeland, Edge, talking about the injuries, the wear and tear on his body. Let me ask you this. If a guy says, I understand the risks, I'm good to go, I'll go to the top of the ladder, and I'll fall down, is that good enough for you?
Yeah, I think that our talents make the conscious decision sometimes to take too many risks. I'm a big aficionado of mat wrestling. And I don't think that they need to take so many unnecessary risks. You know, we've done a lot on my watch to make the working conditions better. The guys work 4 days on and 3 days off. There's no more of those 30 days. You know, you've interviewed a lot of guys here. And in the old days, we were on the road 40 days in a row. And they were. And they were away from their families. which gave them the opportunity to make bad choices.
And the old days were only a few years ago, right? I mean,
Yeah.
this change that you're talking about is recent, right?
It is evolving, and I think we're getting better at what we do. I think we're getting better at managing people, and I think it's incumbent upon the wrestlers themselves to perfect the art of storytelling without thinking they have to be a daredevil.
You know, and I know that this is a difficult issue for you and for your company, but the acknowledgement that the grind was so great, do you look at that and you say, you know what, a lot of guys have had problems with drugs, with painkillers, and the expectation is that if you got to go out there, you got to do something to be able to move that shoulder. Do you sort of look back and say, yeah, I can see the relationship?
I can see guys being on the road for, 6, 8 weeks at a time and abusing themselves, but I also look back and tell the guys, take a look in the mirror. You have the right and the choice to make a good decision. You don't have to go to your room every night and take a handful of somas or take 4 or 5 Vicodin and a 6-pack of beer because you believe that to be your rite of passage. I think it's bad decision making. The immaturity of some athletes, they get rich and make a lot of money and they make bad choices. I can't follow them to their room. Vince McMahon can't follow them to their room and tuck them in and make sure that they aren't taking too many pills. But we can do things about it when we see, and we do. We terminated Jeff Hardy's contract because of a drug issue. And I counseled with him, I fined him, I suspended him, I drug tested him again, and because he wouldn't go to rehab, I terminated his agreement. I don't know what more we can do. And for those that say, the uninformed media, that we aren't doing anything about it, they're not doing their homework.
Maybe what they're saying as much as anything, or maybe what they should be saying is that in the past, in wrestling, stuff was not done about it. That if a guy showed up and he was ready to go, there were no questions what got him there. Is that correct?
I think that the management philosophies in all of our business in a generation ago was much different. When I did Falcon football in the early 90s, and I had a chance to interview a lot of old-time football players in the 60s and 70s, you hear the same basic stories of the team doctor shooting them up for a game and pain pills being dispensed in a trainer's room. And I'm sure it's the same way in hockey. If you talk to an old hockey guy, well, we played with pain, and these punks now are making too much money, and we were tougher then. And, it is a constant evolution. I think we're at a point in our society where we have to look at the quality of these guys' lives. I think the fact that they're able to be home every week allows them not to feel so guilty about missing all the family functions.
How about your guilt? When a guy passes away and you know that it's related to drugs and you know that there's a wear and tear and a grind, whether or not you feel like you could have done anything about it, is there guilt on your part and the company's part?
I can't speak for the entire company. I can speak for myself. I've never felt guilty about anybody that's died on my watch because looking at the guys that passed away on my watch, obviously Owen Hart was an accident, had nothing to do with drugs. Brian Pillman had a congestive heart failure. Did Brian do drugs? Yes. Did I drug test him? Yes. Was it discussed thoroughly on heart-to-hearts? Absolutely. But the NFL missed his heart issue. His own insurance company missed his heart issue. So I felt badly about Brian dying, and I cried, and I think about this kid almost every day. I write about him in my cookbook, which has a lot of wrestling stories in it. But I don't feel guilty because I did all I thought I could do to help him. And I think this whole mindset right now, I don't know what, Michael, I can do about what happened in the 70s or the 80s or the early 90s. I can only affect the future and today. And I can tell you that today we're managing these guys much better, I think. I feel like it. And I don't, Gorilla Monsoon told me one time that a pat on the back is only 18 inches away from a kick in the ass. So I don't want to break my arm, pat myself on the back. But Vince's leadership and the way we want to manage and recruit guys, we're trying to get guys with some character, and they give you less problems. And I don't think we have any big major drug issues right now.
He's JR. You know him as the voice of Raw. You know him as the greatest wrestling announcer ever. But you also now know that behind the scenes, he's probably the second most influential man in the company behind Vince McMahon. I want to talk to you about Kurt Angle, Trish Stratus, and more when OTR returns with JR. One of the guys that I enjoyed meeting so much with his intensity, but his integrity, the interest, his brain is Kurt Angle. Let me ask you this. Are you concerned about his health? Because I know he does have some serious issues with his neck.
I'm concerned about all of our guys, Michael, from the standpoint of what they do and the travel, and this is a hard job. You know, I really get disillusioned with some people that say, well, wrestling's fake and nobody gets hurt and these guys aren't athletes. Wrong, wrong, wrong. Kurt, right now, looks to be this surgery, this experimental surgery, was more orthopedic in nature than the fusion in his vertebrae, is apparently working very well. And we may have accidentally ventured into something that will help these guys going forward a great deal.
JR, what was the thought process before WrestleMania? Because I know that Vince didn't want him to wrestle at WrestleMania. So give me an idea what was going on.
It was a tough decision by everybody, and it has to come back to the talent saying, you know, are you able to do it? Do you want to do it? Well, we knew he wanted to do it, but we weren't sure he was able to do it. We sent him to Dr. Lloyd Youngblood, who worked on Edge and Stone Cold and Chris Benoit, a lot of guys. And his theory was it's not going to get any worse. He's not jeopardizing his limbs. He's going to be in some discomfort, but it's not going to get any worse. If we had been told that the least miscalculation would have offered paralysis for this kid, there's no way that he'd wrestle WrestleMania no matter how badly he would have wanted to. So we checked that out with the best neurological surgeon in America. Says he's not going to get any worse.
Let's move it to Steve Austin, who really is done as a wrestler the way we know it. He's a guy who, you know, wrestling has been his life. He is a guy with a certain personality. How's he handling it? I know you're very close with Steve Austin.
Well, I am, and we just collaborated on, I co-wrote his autobiography with him. That'll be out in November by Simon & Schuster. I sound like Larry King now.
As long as I don't sound like Larry King, I'm good with it.
You're close, though, today. Stone Cold is adjusting well. You know, he was in last year when he walked away from the job, and last year in June 8th. He was frustrated by his injuries. The verdict from the doctors was not good. He needed 2 more levels of fusion. He knew that it was a matter of time. Mother Nature tapped him on the shoulder and said, your time is up. He was in a bad marriage. He wasn't handling any of those issues well. It cumulatively caught up with him. And he's not, and he internalizes things. I get him all the time about express yourself. And he's so expressive on television, but sometimes about his own personal issues, he holds it all in. And they got too much for him. But he's adjusting well, and I think he's going to be, he's a huge addition to Raw again. He's a talented performer. And I'm not going to be so surprised if he doesn't have one more match. I'd like to see him have one more match.
Real one?
Yeah, to be able to, a retirement match so he could go out with his just rewards.
I got to ask you about Trish Stratus, because somehow she found a way to do what I don't think any woman has ever done in the history of your sport, and that is have credibility. People don't yell the same things that when she walks out, they yell at Tori Wilson. How has she carved that out? How have you carved that out?
Her work ethic has led the way. You know, we've taken what she's provided us and embellished it a little bit and promoted it, but I don't know of any female that came in as a non-wrestler that's worked harder than her. I don't know that we've had any males that have actually worked any harder to get better at their craft than her.
Any temptation to go to the other girls and say, learn to wrestle like Trish?
Well, I think it's always good when I hire young women.
It's always good hiring young women, JR.
I enjoy the interview process, and I certainly make sure that they know that we acknowledge Trish's work ethic, and that we think it's a good idea that if you follow her footsteps, you're going to be well served.
Something smells really good in here, and it's your cooking. Speaking of serving it up, we'll talk about the cookbook when OTR returns. Right now, this is something we got from one of our viewers. Hey, Jim, could I survive on a strict diet of pile driver pork chops and SmackDown? S'mores? Be honest, it wouldn't make me fat, would it?
I wouldn't suggest that to anybody, unless you're married to a cardiologist.
More OTR in a moment. Well, in wrestling, it these days seems to be all about writing a book. It's all about the biography, about the background, but for you, it's all about the recipes. JR, tell me about this.
Well, Michael, we wrote a cookbook a 3 years ago that was a New York Times bestseller. This one just came out in June, and this one is more autobiographical. in the sense that the recipes came from my grandmother and my mother's kitchen, and the stories are tales of the road from my experiences on the road, top 10 lists. So this is a real fun project to work on.
And of course, to go along with this, you have created some sauces, right? Tell me about that.
Yeah, my mom used to make the best barbecue sauce, and when...
Are you disrespecting my mom's barbecue sauce?
No, sir.
Well, then how do you know your
everybody's
mom's was best?
cooking is good.
Fair enough.
But my mama died. I was doing a pay-per-view in England, and when I got the word that my mom had died of a heart attack, and we went back to do her funeral arrangements. We found a bunch of recipes. The recipes are the basic foundation for this cookbook. And I wanted to find her barbecue sauce recipe. Couldn't find it. So my wife replicated it as best she could, and she hit it.
Your wife is neither one of these women on the cover of the magazine.
No, my
my
wife is actually pictured in the book, though. No, that's Trish and Stacy on the cover. Beautiful items.
How much you miss football? Because you did a lot of football. I know you love football. Big Oklahoma Sooners fan.
I love football. Probably the only other job that I would ever entertain adding to my plate, not replacing what I do, is the radio voice of the Oklahoma Sooners. Probably, but that's not really a secret. I love football, and when I'm home and I buy all the packages, I'm watching.
You're involved, obviously, in the hiring process for announcers for WWE. And your guys, they all have a certain look. I get the feeling they could host a show like Extra or Entertainment Tonight. If you showed up on the WWE's doorstep right now, would you hire you?
I don't know if Kevin Dunn and Vince do basically that interview process.
You haven't dodged anything yet. Don't dodge that.
No, I'm not.
Would you hire JR?
Well, if I got to know him, I would. I wouldn't hire him for his look. But, you know, you can't judge a book by its cover. And I would be hard-pressed to pass up on the old Oklahoma boy's passion and his love of the game.
Because you're a throwback to the old days. And you know what? I asked you some questions that I know hit a difficult spot for the WWE. But I also said off the top of the show that I'm a big fan of yours because I think as an announcer, what you do on a nightly basis really is extraordinary. And it has been a total pleasure having you back on Off the Record.
Thanks, Michael. I look forward to coming back again.
Pick up the cookbook. Pick up the sauces. Thanks for joining us,
Okay,
Jeff.
buddy. Thanks.
Off the Record with Michael Landsberg is brought to you by the Keg Steakhouse and Bar. For great steaks, good friends, see you tonight. Michael Landsberg's wardrobe supplied by Grafton & Company. Get it at Grafton.
I'm a hard zone runner.